It always feels like a big buzzkill because there's so much good conversation going on, and then you get to listen to me drone on and on. So I apologize for that. But I would also like to note that it's probably the biggest crowd we've had so far, and it's the one that does not feature me speaking very much. There might be a correlation, I'm not sure. But thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. A couple of things I wanted to mention off the top. We have several elected officials here, and I just wanted to recognize them. Please save your applause to the end, especially for Larry Squire.
I hope you don't catch any fish this week. Yeah, jinx your fly rod.
We have council members Heather Miller, Aaron Burdick, Richard Nino, Larry Squire, and Michael Cass here this morning. We have Justin Williams from Senator Tammy Baldwin's office has joined us. The new county administrator, John Light, is here. I think you're still new, right?
Yeah.
30 days in yet?
Yep.
All right. We have Mark Holzman, the superintendent of schools here. You want to go to a good party, just get a superintendent, a county administrator, and a city manager in a room. You can talk about budgets all day. And then from the county board, we have Erica Belke, Sue Ryan, and Kathy Schultz. Please join me in recognizing those folks this morning. Oh, Ann Rowe. Ann Rowe, you're not on my list, and I just talked to you. I'm so sorry. Representative Ann Rowe. I'm going to be very brief. A couple of things. Number one, you'll notice that some of the city staff are wearing jeans today. It's not just because we're cool. It is Denim Day, and so the city employees are raising funds for sexual assault victims, and so we have actually a donation bin on your way out if you care to join us. But so that's why we're wearing denim today. We're raising funds for this for family services and the Sexual Assault Resource Services Center. So if you are so inclined, there's a donation bin on the way out, and you'll see our folks in jeans today. Just wanted to mention that as well. From a city perspective, we have some fun stuff going on. Believe it or not, it's almost May, which means that we will soon be talking about the city budget. Which we will pass in October, November. But there are lots of factors that are influencing that as we speak. And so you will notice that the state budget is being talked about. They've just held their most recent public hearing up in Wausau, and that will impact a lot of the things we do at a local level. So we're watching that very closely. There is discussions of a federal budget someday being discussed, and so we're watching that very closely, and we're talking to our friend Justin to get updates, who I just saw a minute ago, and figure out what the federal government budget will look like and how it will impact us at a local level. We do receive several $1 million in terms of federal programs that we administer through the city. As well as obviously on the state side, our state revenue and other local government aids, local road aids, things like that are impacted by the state budget. From an update perspective, we are continuing to build the Woodman Center. If you've been out on Milton Avenue, you've seen the progress. We are on track for an August completion. We are very excited about that. We are filling out the staff. Getting programming rolling, booking events already, and so we are very excited about that. And we're planning a big shindig, which we will be announcing in terms of opening up that center to the public. And so we are very excited about seeing that be completed. You'll also notice that we have been pretty active in terms of acquiring the properties in and around the GM Jatco site. And so the City Council just recently took the last action in that process. And my city attorneys tell me that we are now in a legal action, so I can't talk about it. But we are getting very close to being the owners of that property. And then we'll be moving towards a redevelopment plan we will foster through with the city. So we are very excited about that. But I am not the star attraction today. I'm going to turn it over to my friends at Forward Janesville and Shar Hermanson. So thank you.
So thank you all. First of all, I just want to say on behalf of the Forward Foundation, who's the sponsor of this breakfast, and Forward Foundation is often described as a quiet organization, but this week we did something that was not so quiet. We completed the sale of the Children's Museum to that organization for $1. So everybody who is or has been on the Forward Foundation, if you could raise your hands, please. So these are the folks that helped that happen. So thank you all. These breakfasts are designed to do two important things. We're here to build community and provide valuable insights into major initiatives and decisions shaping Janesville's future. It's a time for us to connect and learn and strengthen our commitment to our city that we care so much about. In 2024, Derek Green was our board chair, and he took our board on a board retreat, which helped us identify what we were going to work on in 2024, 25, and beyond. The three priorities that came out of that board retreat were focusing on housing, the school referendum, which did pass. We labeled it as Keep Kids Learning. And then third was that we should conduct a business retention and expansion survey in our community. And we truly needed to understand the needs of our local employers. These initiatives have laid the groundwork for Forward Janesville's work in 2024 and beyond. I am excited to share we have made significant progress, and we are continuing to build on the outcomes of this work. First, we need to focus on housing, second, workforce development, and third, speed to market. But today, we're just going to focus on housing. In each of these areas, it impacts our ability of our business to grow, hire, and succeed. Our board had opportunity to be a part of these interviews, and I can say that the business community is very optimistic. They're ready to invest, expand, add new jobs, but they do need our collective support to make that growth happen here in Janesville. Today, you're going to hear about our first important step and showcasing a study completed by University of Wisconsin-Whitewater College of Business and Economics through their Fiscal and Economic Research Center. Russ Cashian was the leader of this project along with the Forward Janesville. So I want to just share a little bit with you about the Business Retention and Expansion Survey outcomes as it relates to housing specifically. We had 50 businesses participate in the survey. It started October 24 and went through February of 2025. Not all businesses who participated were Forward Janesville members. It is available on the Forward Janesville website, so other businesses could participate in the survey. First off, business outlook. 60% of respondents said they plan to expand in the next 12 to 24 months. So that's pretty positive, right? Derek did some of those surveys. He's like, I remember that. 84% of businesses told us that Janesville offers an environment where they feel they can grow. So again, very optimistic. So these are strong, encouraging numbers, and it tells us that they're ready to invest and add jobs. But there is a critical piece that they asked us to address, which is first and foremost housing. So focusing on the housing question specifically, we had 20% that said we need significant improvement, 56% said needs improvement, 18% said we're stable, 4% said you're improving, but no respondents indicated that we needed no changes. So with these findings, we have a housing group and is focused on housing, and that's how we came to do the study. I did want to highlight a few comments that were made, and we promised to keep the people who made the comments discreet, but these are just generalizations of comments that we did receive when doing the study. My staff are commuting or renting from cities like Whitewater, Delavan, Madison, or Illinois. I have executives driving 45 minutes to an hour each way. I think they would support our local businesses and be eager buyers of housing if more options were available in this community. Without better housing options, businesses are struggling to attract the best talent. I lose talent to other markets with better housing options. Inventory at all levels and all price points is extremely limited. Developers say they need incentives. Multifamily housing options are also lacking. Companies pointed out that new subdivisions are needed to accommodate employees and that our current market inventory is either too low or priced beyond the reach of their employees. More apartments downtown. We need apartments that are not subsidized and meet the needs of today's workforce. They would be a tremendous asset for our city center. Across the board, companies emphasize that affordable housing is essential, not just for staff, but for successfully recruiting new businesses to our community. The bottom line is without a strong and diverse and affordable housing options, our ability to grow our workforce and our economy is limited. So that's why we're here today. I want to turn it over to Mick Gilbertson, owner of the Developing Edge, Forward 2526 Chair and Chair of our Housing Strategic Initiative. Mick will walk us through the findings of our latest housing study.
Good morning, and thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Shar, for inviting us today. So I have an incredibly riveting PowerPoint here, full of numbers, charts, and spreadsheets. So if anybody's sitting over here and want to see that, you may just want to grab your chair and kind of try to move in a little and go from there. So this housing study we did with UW-Whitewater is the state of housing in Rock County, Janesville, Wisconsin. And again, just a big thanks to FERC, the Fiscal and Economic Research Center at UW-Whitewater. That's a tremendous asset we have here in this country. I just want to thank them again, and all in this country, in this community, as well as Whitewater at Rock County. I mean, again, great local partners. They did great things for us and provided really good information for us in a timely and actually a very affordable manner. So, introduction, part one, we're going to talk about Rock County single-family housing supply, cost, efficiency, and demand. Part two, we're going to zero a little bit more in on Janesville and break it down by zip code. And then part three, we're going to talk about Rock County renter-occupied housing. Okay? Executive summary. Rock County has a high home price appreciation, which is really affecting the supply. The housing shortage is disproportionately affects low income and workforce households, and our households in the county continue to increase. We have low construction rates. Historically, for about the last 6 years, we have not been building housing units, apartment and or single family and multifamily at the pace we should to meet demand. And finally, we have a decreasing supply of homes with increasing demand. Okay, so in Wisconsin, what's going on? You can see, the year from 2019 down to 2024, the median home price increase, the yearly increase, but total appreciation over that 5-year period is 45%. Everybody knows wages and income has not kept up with that rate. When we look at that down to the Rock County level, again, same 5-year period, we've had a 50% increase. So we're above the state average. So when you think about that, something that somebody bought 5 years ago, they want to sell now and move out. Yes, their price has gone up tremendously as far as the value of their home, but what they're trying to find is a new home has gone up just as much, and then compounding in the interest rates on what the mortgage rates are now, they can't afford to exit that home, move to a new home, have a new home built, and then have that supply on the backside for them. Okay, month's inventory. This is a function where they talk about a month's inventory of homes for sale and how many months it takes to sell that supply in a given time period. Anything at 6 or above is considered a buyer's market. 6 and below is considered a seller's market. Seller's market means higher demand, higher price, and shortage of homes. So you can see from 2019 down to 2024, we've dropped from a buyer's market to a seller's market. Again, compounding the shortage across all categories of housing in our area. Okay, when we look at Janesville prices versus Wisconsin, median home prices in Janesville started at $175 roughly, down to about $279. You can see we were below the state when we started out and still below the state. But when you look at this aggregate over the years, that's almost a 56% increase in home prices. Again, I mean, that's tremendous growth, and this goes to a supply and demand issue, not be able to keep up with the demand. Okay, so key takeaways from this. There is an evidence of shortage of housing in Rock County, and indicating by declining months inventory and increasing home and rental prices and construction rates do not keep up with household growth. Rock County has a high percentage of households who are considered workforce housing or burdened housing. So by definition, when you look at what is considered burdened housing, that's any household whose income that goes to housing is more than 30%. So when you think about a budget and working through your budget and things like that, if you spend more than 30% of your income on housing, that's considered burdened. And that's when other things begin to happen. You do not have a disposable income for other things. You're cutting short on, other spending categories. And that is not where we want to be. We want to be below that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then the shortage is more severe at the workforce and low income levels. And I think personally, that's because of the appreciation in cost for basically the same product. There's no new value in that product other than just growth in price. So when we jump over to rent, Wisconsin median gross rent, that same 5-year period we're looking at, has seen about a total appreciation of 41%. In Janesville, our rent has only gone up about 25% in 5 years. So kind of, 5-year, year-over-year growth, some pretty big jumps coming out of COVID. What that does, though, is other areas in the state is getting much higher rent rates than Janesville's getting. So what happens there is developers and builders and people who are doing larger apartment projects are building in those communities. Land is kind of a constant value, construction costs are kind of a constant value. But when you have a return on investment on that initial input that's higher in another community, that's where they're going to go and focus. Dane County is going crazy with housing costs because their rent rate is significantly higher than what is in Rock County and Janesville. So to talk to a developer who's building in Dane County and say, hey, come on down and build projects in Janesville, and they say, well, what can you get for rent? Well, $800 to $1,600, for a 1 to 2 bedroom apartment. Same product that's built in Madison, they may be getting $1,200 to $1,800 per month. So again, the money they're getting back on their investment is higher there, and being business people, that's where they are going right now. So we need to find a way to attract those people down here somehow within our market. Okay, rental appreciation. This is an interesting slide. Now this is, and I talked with Russ about this slide a lot. This is census data, and so when the censuses are done, people say, I'm a renter, and this is how much I pay. When you look at the categories, less than 500, 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 2,000, and over 2,000. In 2018, there were 1,900 units and 12,000 units in Rock County in that category. Going forward to 2023, there's 1,100 units and 7,800 units in that category. These units jumped up 2 categories into the high end. So what that indicates is that, again, our rent costs are going up, but we're not filling the backside down here. So that's creating, again, higher demand and increased costs for everyone with that issue. Okay, so lack of affordable housing. Single and cohabitable households that have housing costs at or below $696 a month, that's their cutoff not to be considered burdened. Households with housing costs below $915 with children, that's where they need to be considered not burdened. And this information comes from a group called United for ALICE. And ALICE stands for, I want to make sure I get this right, refer to my notes. Come on. They asked me if I wanted a podium, and I said no. Okay. So ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. So think about people who are working, they have an income, they're contributing, they're out there trying to do things, but they're just not making enough to hit that 30% of their budget going to housing. So when you look at how that breaks into Rock County, 64% are above ALICE and considered burdened, and in Wisconsin it's 65%. So we're tracking fairly close there. So we're very similar to what the households are in Wisconsin when we look at ALICE households. And when we look at that as affordability by income in Rock County, people who are making $1,000, 20 to 35, 35 to 50, 50 to 75, and 75 or more, 95% of those households are paying more than 30% of their income to housing. In the $25,000 or $35,000 category, about 70% of those households are paying more than 30% of their income. You know, it doesn't start coming, you know, even up to the 35 to 50,000, 40% of those households are paying more than 30% of their income. It doesn't, you know, get into over $50,000 where we begin to see that income really begin to break and change, where housing becomes affordable to them. The other thing that ALICE looks at is how many units are in a community that you need to support those people that are, so they're not burdened. When you look at single or cohabitating households, the shortage of housing units is 12,000. That means, you know, it's a negative number, so that means that there is a shortage of 12,000 units in that category that would need to be built in Rock County to meet that demand. When you look at households with children, there's a surplus of 4,500. So when you take these two numbers together, that would indicate there's a shortage of 8,000 household units to meet that income category in the county. So if we could wave a wand and build 8,000 units that were in that price point that they could afford, that would relieve that housing burden in the county. The problem is that would dump 8,000 units that they're currently occupied into the marketplace that probably wouldn't be rented because we don't have that high demand in overnight. So, you know, the idea of these two numbers indicating a shortage of 8,000 units, we have to look at that and decide how to address that. And it's not a matter of building 8,000 units, it's a way to put more supply of housing units into the marketplace to put pressure on the rents, to lower those rents, okay?
Nick,
Yes.
stupid person asking a question, I acknowledge that.
Stupid person answering the question.
Affordable housing, under
Yes.
this analysis, is the definition that it would be less than the 30% threshold?
Correct. So 30% is the cutoff. If you're paying more than 30% of your income, you're considered burdened. If you're paying less than 30% of your income, you're not burdened.
So affordable housing would be a percentage, and it would be a movable target based upon your income.
Yes, and we have a slide that shows that a little bit later. And you know, and we've had this conversation internally on the Housing Committee and at the Ford Foundation is, you know, is 30% the right number? Should it be 25%? Should it be 28%? And that number is typically inclusive of rent, insurance, and utilities. You know, so when you begin to looking at that is, and then, you know, is there different categories? You know, obviously as you make more money, that number changes, but there's not necessarily product in the marketplace that reflects that change. You know, if someone's making, you know, so make some easy number here, $100,000 a year, they can spend $30,000 a year on housing costs. That's almost $2,500 a month. If they want to rent a single bedroom apartment in Janesville, there's probably not a lot of units available in that $2,500 rate. So they're going to buy, you know, maybe rent something for $1,800 or $2,100, and you know, then that pushes them below that 30% threshold. ALICE is very confusing to me, and how they look at it. And I spent a lot of time at their website reading their charts and things like that. So, but it is a little higher definition, a little higher bar that they hold everything to. So again, quick recap, we'll have another slide of this later, but in 2010, the population in Rock County was 160,000 in rough numbers. There were 2.51 persons per household. That's an interesting number to follow as we go forward in time. There were 64,000 housing units in demand. When you take this number divided into that number, with 63,000 units available, we had a shortage of housing units. In 2020, population in the county was almost 64,000. Our average household per unit dropped down to 2.5, which increased the number of housing units needed. That increased the demand up to 66, almost 67,000, with only 65,000 housing units available. So when you look in this 10-year period, we only added about 3,000 housing units in 10 years. That's 300 units per year. That does not meet the demand and growth that we have for housing. When you look at 2030, the Census Bureau says our county population is in decline to 160,000, okay? There's whole other ramifications of accepting that as what we want. The average household is gonna go down to 2.3 people. People are aging out, boomers are moving on to greener pastures, things like that, so that threshold is going down. So, but the housing demand will still increase again to 68,000 units. And again, if we look at current construction rates, we will actually meet demand at that point. So we can do nothing, wait 5 years, let our population decline, and meet housing demand, okay? I don't think that's a great choice. When we look at zip code maps and prices, this is a little bit different than the census tracts. The 3 major zip codes in the area, the 45, 46, 48. We did not include 47 because that's the post office boxes. And we did not include 37, which I think is Orfordville, Footville out there. So 45% increase in home price here, 52% increase in home price here, 79% in home price out here. I mean, that is a huge jump for a zip code when you think about it. Okay, going back to that slide, talking to Tim's question about income and brackets. These are same zip codes, income brackets, based on how the census tract looks at it. If we said that this is the total number of households that we have, this represents the portion, the distribution of those households. You can see we have, you know, different categories here for their prices. But when you begin to look at a household, which represents 4% of our population in those zip codes, to meet the 30% criteria for not being burdened, their monthly rent would have to be $250, or a mortgage payment of that per month at 6.5% 30-year mortgage would be a $37,000 home. Doesn't exist in the marketplace, okay? I don't think there's a $250 rental unit in the marketplace that's not assisted. As you move down these income categories, these two highlighted in yellow is kind of the break even. Our median rent in our marketplace is $1,046. Not to be burdened, to be below the 30%. Right now, that's 12%, that represents a 12% number, you know, going down this way. So $1,200 rent, you're not burdened at our median rent. The median home cost of $279,000, you know, you need an annual income of, you know, $50,000 to $75,000 for the rent. You need an annual income of $35,000 to $50,000. So anything below this point is not burdened, everything above that point. So, you know, we're just not meeting the demand, not to be burdened. Okay, zoning. City's working on a new zoning code. What is the impacts on zoning on housing? Kronberg Urbanist Architects is a firm out of Atlanta. They specialize in urban planning, neighborhood development, and zoning. These are some graphics that they put together. So impact zoning. This is kind of what typical zoning looks like. You have a city block, large lots, large homes, big setbacks. Say the home prices are $450,000 to $650,000. You look at a new zoning code that allows you tighter setbacks, higher density, and different types of housing units on the same plot. You know, you still have the large single-family homes, but you also might have duplexes added into it. There's a single-family home, or an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, a space above a garage, a small, you know, the idea of a mother-in-law house on your lot. That also becomes an income generator for that property owner. The duplexes, you can have an owner-occupied duplex where the owner lives on one half, a renter lives on the other half. They begin to have an income stream then to meet their mortgage and their housing demand. The other thing that does is it removes absentee landlords. That's a huge problem where we do not have landlords who are in our community, in our city, and they don't care what's happening to the neighborhood. They don't care what's happening to the property. You know, they just want their check every month. So then you look at that, this becomes a much denser use of the same amount of land. What that has an impact on property tax. Going back to this kind of very Euclidean zoning, it's called, where it's single type of home, large lot, large home. You know, maybe there's a total value of $3.3 million for those homes on those lots. In a higher density development where you have a mixed housing type that's allowed by zoning, that value can go up to as high as 5.3. You have almost a 60% increase in the value of the land for the same amount of curb, gutter, sidewalk, paving, sewer, and water in the street. Those development costs, instead of being divided among 6 lots, now are divided among multiple lots. Your development costs go down, your initial costs to sell that product to someone goes down. So it's just how zoning can impact housing development. Okay, again, this is just to blow up that previous slide we talked about, where we're looking at population increases, projected population decrease, people per housing unit is going down, you know, not meeting demand, potentially beating demand. But what does that mean to us as a community? Tough choices. Choice number 1 is we fulfill the population expectations, contrary to our BRE study that says we are going to expand, we're going to hire, we're going to add more people. Okay? So the outcomes from that is we have stable housing growth. You know, if we build at the recent pace, you know, the current stock and new stock will meet future demand. We have an aging population, we have a decline in population. It's a disincentive for existing firms to expand and for new firms to move here. They feel they will not be able to find workers, they will not be able to find places to house their workers. Fewer school-aged children, which means our reimbursement rates go down from the state, and further compounding our budget issues that we have in the schools. Okay? Tough choice number 2 is we exceed the populations of the census. We say, yeah, government's wrong. Sorry. And we're going to exceed those projections. Okay, outcomes of that, we have a tight housing stock. You know, if we keep building at the current pace, we will not meet that future demand. Result of that is high rising prices in both home prices and rent. We're in the same boat we are right now. It's an incentive to move elsewhere. It's a disincentive for existing firms to expand because they can't find homes for their workers, and it's going to be harder to attract new businesses in. Okay? Third choice, assertive choice. We're going to exceed the population expectations. We are going to grow. We are going to move forward. We're going to become better. Outcomes, we're going to exceed the past construction rate. We're going to build more units in all categories. Assisted, low income, workforce, market rate. We're going to balance the population out. We're going to attract new families, new kids, new workers in. It's an incentive for existing firms to expand. The ones that Shar talked to and Derek talked to and Tanner talked to from BMO, they're all going to expand and say, yeah, we have housing, we can get people in here, we have a place to put them. Those people will then spend money in the local economies and provide, you know, jobs to others. Firms will locate here. There's housing available, there's incentives. The city does a great job of developing industrial sites around, you know, so it's just a win-win. Also, what happens is we get more school-aged children into the school districts, Janesville and Milton, which means that more kids, more revenue, and it just works better for everyone involved. Okay, that's how I see solving this problem. Okay, so with that, what's next? And questions. Yes.
Does any of that data show our current aging demographics and what inventory is going to be coming to market with our aging demographic that we have?
We haven't augured into that detail yet. That would probably be step 2 of this study, is really looking more at a market demand analysis, saying here's our population demographics, here's our income demographics, here is our current housing stock, here's what we think's in the pipeline, here's what we think we need to supply to meet that demand in the various categories. That'd be a good, spin-off from this study.
Because you're going through all the slides, the biggest thing that stands out to me is, do we have a housing crisis or a wage crisis? Because if we're losing people if everyone's moving to Dane County, paying more for rents, doing all those things, it's because they're making more money.
Right. I think it's both. We've been very successful. When you look at what happened in 2008 with the economy and with the GM plant closing, Janesville and Rock County was very flexible and able to pivot and attract new types of businesses in. Now, those businesses that came in were not paying at the wage rate that the manufacturing plants were, their logistics jobs. It's just a different thing. So one of the challenges is to find that population, that will come in, that will pay higher to be able to afford more housing, but also, to do that. So it's two-pronged. And when you look at some of those appreciations of housing costs and rent costs going up 25 to 50% in 5 years, wages have not kept pace with that. I don't know what wage growth is over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I'm just, in my brain, I'm thinking, okay, if we expand that population with affordable housing, well, now that creates more competition, which would suppress wages, not enhance
Right.
wages.
So, but what will happen is when you think about it, someone who owned that $175,000 house in 2019 and they could afford that, they still own that house in 2025. It's worth $270,000. They could sell it, but the problem is there's not a $270,000 house in the marketplace that they can buy. It's a $380,000 or $450,000 house. And also they may be sitting on a mortgage that was a 3% mortgage. Now their mortgage is 6%, so the monthly payment doubles. So they're locked into that home, so they won't step out of that lower priced home to open up that inventory for someone moving up, in the wage scale and in the workforce. So it's a hard answer, and yes, we don't have enough lower priced housing units in the market, and we don't have enough high paying jobs in the market. Other questions? Mark?
I guess specifically to the downtown area, what do you see as what's next for that? We've recently heard that there's some below market rate development discussions that are taking place, and yet we also talk about that young professional who, that demographic's looking for certain opportunities, as they look at housing, and yet when you look at market rate availability in our downtown area, it's very, very limited. How do you start to tie those together?
I think I will answer the first part of that question. I'll let maybe Kevin answer the second part of that question. As I see it, what is the strategic view of the downtown and what projects best fit that strategic view? So I think we can kind of define that, and the ARISE plan and strategy indicated, these things should be developed in this way. Obviously, the data we have indicates that, assisted housing is also needed. So, I still go back to what is the strategic view, what's the best project, what's the best location, what's the best developer. Kevin?
Yeah, and I would answer that question by saying we need to do all of it. We need all forms of it, and including in downtown. And there are multiple plans that are being developed for market rate in downtown that are moving through the approval process right now. And we're continuing to work to attract developers for both market rate and workforce housing, or whatever kind of housing you want to call it. But I think you have to do both. And that is what will help drive a diverse economy. And we, in addition to just downtown, where we've built hundreds of units of market rate in the city in the most recent years, thanks to the works of our folks, city staff and Jimsy and working with folks like Hubs and those, and you're seeing those go up now. And that's going to continue to generate more interest in our area.
Bill?
Yeah, we're going to be promoting some mobile family sites today in Milwaukee to commercial brokers and developers. So this is pretty sobering to watch this today. We're constantly fighting the headwinds of the very things that you talk about, and that is rental rates. And when you say what's next, I'm wondering what are we going to be able to do about that? I didn't realize the discrepancy between us is the way it worded, but the difference between bigger markets and ours in terms of the lease rate, and it really is choking off our development, as well as single family. Is the city going to begin to get involved again with developers on developing retail?
So,
Single family housing.
so I think the question was, if I can recap it, just make sure I understood and everybody else can hear it, is that given the competition for return on investment of other real estates in other areas and the cost of doing projects here, how do we find a way to do projects to stay within the price points we need to stay within and get those projects built here versus somewhere else, correct? Yeah. And I think you said specifically, what can the city do? I think one, we gotta look at some strong public-private partnerships. You know, what mechanisms are out there that we can work together as a group collectively to begin to move that needle? You know, if we bring in, you know, higher paying jobs, that can move the rent rates up, but that doesn't do anything for those existing workers that we have unless we get enough supply in the pipeline to really change that demographic of where rent pressure is. Kevin, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would just also say that one of the things that you do see in those markets is that there is intense competition amongst the developers. And so it's not like they're not looking down here. They can still make money on projects here. I mean, we're proving that now. And the occupancy rates are very, very high for anything that we build. And so they still are getting a good return on investment. Now, does it sometimes require some assistance on that? Yeah, it does. I mean, we've done that most recently with some of our housing products. We also have a variety of programs that we've created to assist in that, including TIF and including our housing programs that we've funded as well, and we're continuing to explore new areas to do that as well. The other piece of that is on the zoning code. The zoning code is incredibly important, and the changes that we're making to that, Nick just referred to it, about providing more opportunity to create more dense housing, to create accessory dwelling units and things like that. You're seeing the success of that and all over right now, and I think we have to continue to build on those trends as well. But the zoning code, give us input on that. It's very important. We're going through that process right now, and that's going to drive a lot of it.
Okay. Renee, did you have a question?
Yeah, as a real estate agent, 5 of the 8 listings I'm working on for this month are available because someone passed away. And last month, 90% of my listings were because of retirement out of the rental business. So I had owner occupants come in and buy the duplex and then be able to afford the duplex. Otherwise, if it was a first-time buyer, they absolutely had to go single family and they had to have assistance.
And that is one of the things we're looking at, is the idea of that. It's interesting that, and just so everybody heard what she said, 5 of 9 of the listings you have this month, 5 of 8 were from the owner passing on and being deceased, aging, you know, so that's interesting. So it's not new units coming into the marketplace, it's existing that are just becoming vacated. And then the other one, last month you said 90% of the listings were from a rental company that got out of the business and sold the units back.
Individuals retiring.
Individuals retiring out of that. So again, that was that model where the renting tenant became the owner and the landlord of a duplex, and that's how they were able to make it affordable to them to become a first-time homeowner, which is a great model. There's that idea of the owner occupant, you know, who's the landlord, and renting. You know, they're sitting there, they're seeing what their tenant's doing, they're making sure the tenant's cutting the grass, getting the trash out, getting the trash picked up. I mean, that's a huge difference than someone who lives in California at a different zip code and just gets a rent check every month. Other questions? Yes, Oakley.
Nick, maybe it's a comment, is that Tobin's mom recently, we got her into Cedar Crest. And it was pretty fun because she moved into the cottages at age 90, so she's pretty excited that she's going into a retirement home at 90. But we have been blown away about what is going on there. And every time we go there, there's dirt and holes in the ground, and the growth is pretty impressive. And then when you talk to the neighbors there, they're coming from all over. They are checking cities out. They're showing up at the Forward Janesville office, the Convention and Visitor Bureau, and they're picking us, Janesville, for quality of life. The homes are beautiful, they're well managed, you know, they're duplexes, right? And I think we're on the market for retirees that have the ability to live there, right? So it's kind of like, do you let the market run the show, or do you have a very specific plan? And if we let the market run the show, which I think is your tough choice 1 and 2, that's where we're going to be. Where I think Cedar Crest provides a very concentrated example of when you really focus on something, you align resources, you put risk up, right? They took on debt to do that. But it's a not-for-profit, so they have good intentions, which talks about motivation and getting the right stakeholders together, so it's not just a return on investment. You can do some pretty good stuff. The other target, if you only had one other group to focus on, I don't know how we're going to compete with the young professionals in Madison. I mean, it's pretty cool up there if you go up there. But young families, right? We've got a school districts that are working their tails off to improve. And the quality of life here, the Children's Museum, the Boys and Girls Club, right? The parks. I think if we could really, start to focus, because there's a lot going on, and you knocked it out of the park of really explaining that. I mean, it was very concise with a lot of data. I think we can do some great stuff, and I think that's my question to this group. What's next is, what are we gonna do? Because I kind of feel that if we're doing this or that, will we really be able to tackle it? So I'm excited. I loved your presentation. I hadn't seen it, and thank you.
Yeah, and we will be rolling this presentation out through the Forward Janesville website, and I'm sure the city will put a link up and share it, so you begin to look at it. I've been told I will be doing dog and pony shows to all the service clubs, so look for me at your Lions and Rotary meetings coming up, or other service clubs. But yeah, the idea of a partnership on what do we do. I think the private sector has things they can bring to the table. I think the city has things they can bring to the table. And instead of working in silos away from each other, the downtown is a great example of a very successful private partnership that took 20 years to do. I hope we don't take 20 years to solve the housing crisis, but one, we'll be the first ones in the country to solve the housing crisis. I think that would be pretty cool. That's a good goal. Measurable, obtainable, maybe obtainable. But I think working together is the way we're going to solve this problem. And bringing different housing categories to the marketplace, I think will make us even more attractive. In all honesty, at 25, I was never going to live in Janesville. By now, I would have been in Boston. That was my career trajectory. But things changed. I came back to Janesville and found out great place to raise a family. There's still a pretty big bang for the buck. And you know what? We're close to Madison. It's easy to get there. It's easy to get to Rockford. Thank you for Rock Road. I don't know if Steve's still here for building the interstate for us. Easy to get to Chicago, easy to get to Milwaukee. All those fun places, it's easy to get to from here. But there's a lot more things to do here. And you go visit those places and come back, I think is what we have to think about. Okay. Yep. I'll let you close.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for Janesville, Nick and Shar, for the work and the effort, and thank you all of you for being here. This is about the conversations. This is one part of the conversations, but the other conversations are occurring at the tables around here. So the next time you come, invite your friends. Like I said, this is our biggest attendance so far, and continue these conversations as we leave the room. Engage with us, engage with Ford, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.